Just preparing the live stream, it won't be long. Okay, I think we're just about there. So we are going to go for a fly in the 737 MAX in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. This is the version of the 737 that is supplied with the simulator. So I've gone through and written up a startup procedure for the aircraft that we will be following, a paper procedure that shows you where everything is in the aircraft. If you want to see it, this is what the procedure looks like. So it goes through all the view keys to help you navigate around the aeroplane. It tells you what to do in the walkaround, and then it goes through telling you each keyboard key to press to get to different areas of the interface. And obviously you can see the FMS looks horrendous, but once you've done it once or twice, it's fine. How to do a gross flight plan check, how to configure the mode control panel, how to go through engine start, pushback. Yeah, and it just goes through step by step, you know, in a very functional, procedural way of helping you out, basically. So let's see how we get on with it, shall we? I've put a link in the video notes to where you can get the document from. It's very much a first draft at the moment. If I do update it and you do get a copy of the document, then you will always be able to re-download using the same link in the future. Okay, so let's go in the aeroplane, or rather, let's go walk around the aeroplane first, because it's built into the simulator, we need to go and do the ground crew operations, which is go and take the covers off the aeroplane. So we take the static port covers off and the pitot tube covers. So I think before we get going, it might be worth having a little look around the aeroplane just to see how well modelled it is. So if we go back out of the walk-around view, and we'll use the drone camera to do this. So we're parked on the ground at Stansted Airport just outside London. And this is one of the stock liveries. Let me just correct the zoom a bit. It goes a bit panoramic when you go to the drone camera. I always zoom in a little bit to remove that. So we're going to go and have a look around the modelling of the aircraft just to see how well done it is. So looked it up online. Apparently this version of the 737 was developed by Asobo themselves. So their own internal development team have worked on it. So we're going to go and have a look. It's very nicely done, isn't it? And the patina on the engines is really, really good. And you can see the fan blades blowing around in the wind. So you can see the rain is falling on the windows at the moment. Go in through the glass into the quiet of the cabin. So using the drone camera, obviously we can fly through walls, and I've not actually looked at any of this, so I'm guessing this is the executive lounge. Very swish. So this must be a business version of the 737, not the normal passenger version. For some reason it's really stuttering badly. I'm not sure if that's an issue with the aeroplane or the airport or the weather or what. Or maybe with my internet connection at the moment, who knows. So we have beds. It's something else, isn't it? An awful lot of LEDs wired up into the ceiling. I wouldn't want that job. An enormous flat screen TV. This is the 737 MAX in 2024. Just looking at the comment from Dave there. So he's asking, is the MAX standard in 2024? I'm not sure if it's in the standard version. I've got the captain's version of 2024. So you'd have to look up to see which version of Flight Simulator includes which aircraft. Yeah, I think it's just a combination of the weather, the airport, and the other aircraft is causing the sim to stutter. Okay, so let's go and have a look around the cockpit. So we're going to fly through the wall of the cockpit to get here, and obviously we can have a better look a bit later on. But how is the Max different? Well, the thing is, it's not tremendously different. A lot of these switch panels are the same as other versions of the 737. So, shall I change the weather for the moment, and we'll bring it back in a little while, just so you get to have a bit brighter view around the cabin as we look around. So yeah, a lot of the panels haven't really changed between any of the 737 models in like the last 20 years. There's little bits of differences here and there. So bits and pieces of automation have crept in. Like you've got an automatic mode now on the cabin pressurization system, for example. I'll point them out as we work around. Just from my own reference of what I have seen is different than what we have seen before. The mode control panel's changed a little bit, but only in look. It functions exactly the same. So, if we go out of the drone camera, we're back in the normal pilot view within the aircraft now. Let's go and put the weather back. I think it was the weather probably that was causing the stuttering, because it is horrific weather outside, but I thought it might be good to have the horrific weather. So, I need to change the time, don't I? Let's go do that. So I need to put the time in the middle of the day, but we'll have live horrible weather. So there it comes. And water dribbling down the screen. Okay. Although saying this, for the purposes of this test flight, I'm just wondering whether we should... So you get to see the cockpit nicely. I'm going to take the live weather off. We'll just go to a few clouds in the sky to keep it neat and tidy for us. So then you get to see everything nice and clearly around the cockpit as we go around. Okay, so there is the normal tablet that you get in Flight Sim 2024. I'm not sure if it is integrated. I haven't tried it to see if it integrates with the FMC. I wouldn't have thought it would. That would be a bit of a stretch. I'll just pop the yoke off so we can see things easily when we're getting the airplane ready. So let's work around the airplane together. So before we get started, let's go and have a look in settings and see what control configurations I've got. So I think I've gone for, I've got a profile called Basic 2 Engine. And if we look in there, what it really means, he says, okay, the keyboard has stopped working. Let's try that again. Settings, controls. We're off to a great start, aren't we? Oh my word. Okay. I'm going to go to the main menu and come back in. I've been messing around with the simulator for the last hour, so yeah, the sim's broken. Quit to desktop. We'll load the sim up and then you get to see a fresh flight from scratch. Is it even going to quit to desktop? Oh, it is. That's a surprise. Sometimes it doesn't, although it's still sitting here, look, and it's gone. So we just make sure, look in Task Manager. So it has been a lot more stable since the update yesterday. So yeah, it looks like it's gone away. So let's go and open up Flight Sim, load it up. So I'm not sure what happened there. It stopped responding to the keyboard in any of the menus. But I don't want it to go wrong during the flight because we want to give it a fair shot at actually operating the aeroplane. So while we're waiting for the sim to load up, let's go and have a look at LittleNavMap, look at our route, and we'll transfer it over to Navigraph as well because it's useful to have Navigraph around. So it's a manually created route. We leave Stansted on the BKY 5R standard instrument departure. we're going to put a couple of VORs in the route just to show how you can program the FMC. Then we're going to do the AGP E1E standard terminal arrival route in towards Edinburgh. And again, what we might do, if we can, if it will let us, yeah, LittleNavMap won't let us even do this, is put an extra waypoint in to this part between, so there's a gap between the star and the approach, and we'll see if we can insert an extra waypoint to box off the approach. So we're going beyond what LittleNavMap will let us do. We might be able to do it in Navigraph though. So flight plan. If I copy the route description to the clipboard and then unload in here, make a new flight, go to the pencil, paste it in. So there's our basics of our route. We need to go and select the departure runway and the approach runway. It'll be ILS24. So what I was saying is, after Tartan, it would be nice if we could go to Lama. After, this hasn't got it either. Look, you can't do it. I think you can do it in the aeroplane, but none of these tools will let you do those kind of inserting waypoints into what would be a discontinuity. Okay, so we'll just put that out of the way for the moment, and we'll have the charts at hand. Actually, let's leave it on the... Actually, for taxiing purposes, it would be good to have that up, wouldn't it? So, sim's running. Go back into free flight. We've still got the 737 MAX chosen. We're going to depart from EGSS, which is Stansted, London. We're going to wind the time back, if it will let us. So, purely just so you get to see what's going on in the cockpit. We'll stick the plane on one of the gates and say start flight. And you can see lovely weather. It really has been horrendous in the UK for the last month or so. So BFR 2020 is saying, do you think 2024 is worth getting now? I have 2020, but was wondering if I should upgrade. It depends on your hardware, really. Although saying that, a lot of people have got the same hardware they had for 2020 and they're quite happily carrying on. It does make use of your hardware more than it did previously, so it will be throwing more around. It is still quite unstable, but it's improving rapidly. I think if people, I'll get my words out correctly in a moment. I think a lot of the problems with crashing and things like that are people expecting it to work with old add-ons, and they're trying to shoehorn old add-ons in, and they're causing massive instability in the simulator. So let's go do this again. Get rid of the covers on the static ports and on the pitot tubes. I think we can actually click on this, even though there's no ladder here. We can click on the door, which I find enormously amusing, that we're going to leap into the doorway from where we were standing. Okay, so I will leave the weather as it is. It's not too dark. So we're going to go overhead. Oh, before we do anything, this is where we came unstuck a moment ago. I was going to go into controls, look at the quadrants, and you'll see that I've got the basic 2 engine set up here. So all that's really done, if we search for throttle, you can see I've got the X joystick L axis X on throttle 1 axis. So you can see I've got a thrust master, but I've got the add-ons on it as well, but it doesn't matter. The 0 to 100% axis tends to cover the full range easily. So, and then if you go and click on the cog, you can see on it's inverted, and on the action curve I've straight lined it. So I use this for several aeroplanes, which is why there's that kink in the line. So what that really means for me is I can move the joysticks through their full range, or sorry, the throttles through their full range. To use reversers, I have to hold a button on, I think. Oh no, I haven't configured it. So hopefully we won't need the reversers at Edinburgh. Let's see how we might fix that. So if I go to settings and controls, and we're looking at basic to engine here. So yeah, I never use the buttons. What I'm talking about is these red buttons on the side. I'm going to repurpose them. So search for joystick button 1. Yeah, it's got arm auto throttle on it. So I'm going to delete that mapping. So there's now nothing on that button. So if I search for reverse, and you'll see hold throttle reverse thrust. So now I'm going to press that button. So I've pressed that red button. So when I hold that button on, it will go into reverse thrust. So resume. So now I'm going to hold the red button on, and when I move it forwards, oh, it's still not going to work. It's being a so-and-so, isn't it? Okay, we'll go without reversers for the moment. Maybe that's one of the issues with the aeroplane, I don't know. Isn't it great doing live streams, how you find these things out and you see the unedited raw version with me all the time, with me trying to solve things as I go to help out. And sometimes I come unstuck, sometimes I have magical wins. So Shift and 7 will take us overhead anyway. We will take the weather off, otherwise it's going to be so dark you won't see anything. So we'll put a few clouds in place. Okay, so batteries on, and close the lid on them. Then further overhead, we're going to go and set the inertial reference system to nav, both sides. We're going to move the knob here to heading status. We don't need the dome light because we've just brightened the cockpit up by putting sunshine on it. And then Shift 7 brings us back down further. We can go and arm the emergency lights and close the lid on them. We can go and do the window heaps and the probe heaps, and we can go down to the FMC. I'm just having a quick look around this. It's interesting. Yeah, we haven't got external power in play. We could if we wanted to. I haven't got this in the checklist. If you really want to use external power, and because we're going to be talking for so long, we might flatten the batteries. So what we can do is go to ground services once you've got the power in the aeroplane. Tune ground. Request power supply.
Ground Boeing Bravo Charlie Echo 912 ground power unit. Please send a ground power unit.
So it sometimes steps on itself when it's doing the radio comms. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. So if we go and look outside, you'll see the truck coming up. Whoops. And he will dance all over the place because Flight Sim hasn't improved in this regard at all. But he will try to reverse the APU, or sorry, the external power truck into place, and an umbilical will arrive when he's happy. There it goes. And how he managed to do that turn, I don't know. So we have now got external power available to us, so we should be able to. Again, your mileage may vary with this. Doesn't appear to have done a lot, does it? We just have to remember we've used external power there. Okay, anyway, let's go and get on with programming the plane up. So if you've used 737s before, this can be very obvious to you. I'll go slower on another video explaining all of this. So we go pause init, we go next page, we pick up a GPS position, we go previous page. In fact, it's already done it, look. It's already aligned by the look of it. So we don't need that. Where I've already been talking and looking around outside, it's already done it. So it's already aligned, so there is no alignment. So reference airport, a good way of checking that, yeah. If you've got navigation and attitude indication showing up, the inertial reference system is already aligned. So EGSS we're taking off from. And then we go route, And we go EGSS again. Again, this is a fault. It should have carried it over from the reference into the scratchpad automatically. And we're going to EGPH. We'll just make up a flight number, 123. We're taking off runway 22 from Stansted. If we wanted to put any inter-route waypoints in, we can, so we will. We'll go via the Trent VOR. So we're going to go direct to it. And the Pole Hill VOR. And we're going to activate our route and execute it, and then we'll go into, what should we do next? I'll follow my own instructions, shall I? So we're going to go and do the performance parameters next. So we're going to go and press the init ref option. We can either press perf init once we've done the route, or we can go init ref. It's the same thing. So if I go perf init, it comes up. We can put our altitude in for cruise, so 360. That's 36,000 feet. And 0 fuel weight, you just press it and it pre-calculates it. Press it again and it populates it. Put in how much reserve fuel we want. We'll say 1 ton. Put in our cost index, so we'll say 100. Normally you'd get all these numbers off of the operational flight plan, so if you're using Simbrief, for example, it will all be on there. You can execute those changes, then we can go through to the N1 limits, that's your climb performance, and then takeoff. So we'll take off with flaps 5. That calculates the V-speeds, so we can drop them in. We can then pre-calculate the centre of gravity, and it said trim 4. Now, I am aware, when you look at the trim wheel, this is one of the things that's bugged in it. Look at that. You could use that as a sanding machine, couldn't you, if you put a rough surface on it. Okay, so we've done the takeoff references, so we need to go and set up the departure. So runway 22, BKY5R, execute, go back to the index, go to the arrival into Edinburgh, ILS runway 24, AGP E1E, execute that. Go look in the legs page and we'll go next, next. There's a discontinuity on the way between Pole Hill and Agped, which we're expecting. So we'll pull that up over the top and execute. If we go next, we should see, yep, there's the next discontinuity. So this is between the star and the approach. So we said it would be really nice if we could put in an extra waypoint here, didn't we? So it's the Lama waypoint. So let's see if it'll let us. Drop it in, and it's got the correct one there. So then go next, go down. Obviously, inserting a waypoint makes another discontinuity usually, so we still need to pull that up over the top to clean the gap up. Okay, so the routing is done. The performance data is done. So if we go and look in the legs, just click on legs and it will take you to the top, and you can see it's got the speeds and the altitude restrictions involved already in there, and we've got a solid line. So the next thing we're going to go do is we can do a gross flight plan check. I hope we don't lose the batteries while we're doing this, while we're sat here for so long. Should we go and put the APU on just to make sure? So I'm doing things a little bit out of order. So what we're doing is starting the APU. So I've put the left outer fuel tank on, pump on, and started the APU. If you have a look outside and come around the back, you'll see heat starting to pour out of the exhaust port. So there's a small gas turbine in the tail that provides the compressed air to spin the engines up and electrical power. But the trick being, we won't sit on the batteries forever. So a light will come on telling us that the APU is off bus. It will go blue. It's a bit weird that, yeah, this is like lit up blue, look, saying ground power's available, but when we flicked it, nothing seemed to happen. So when this goes blue, we'll flick the arrows down. Although saying that, this has changed in the 737 MAX. That underneath this cover, the bus transfer is set to auto, but it doesn't seem to be automatic. So what that really means, you'd have to have the pilot operating handbook, I guess, for the 737 MAX to know all about that. So we're just waiting for the APU gen off bus light to come on, which means it's available. The use of language on some of these buttons in the Boeings is hilarious. There it goes. So then we can flick these down, and we're now using the APU to generate electricity for the aircraft, so it won't run the batteries flat while we're busy talking about things. Okay. So we're going to go and do what's called a gross flight plan check. So all you need to do for this is put the major mode for the navigation display to plan mode, and it shows a north-facing diagram. You can increase the range on it, and then we can go, when you put it into plan mode, an option appears on the flight legs page with step at the bottom right corner. So if you just press step, it will put a center marker next to each leg, and that's the center of the navigation display. So you can step through your route and just make sure it looks broadly correct. So yep, so there's our llama that we put in, look, and then it goes into the approach. So it's all good. When you're happy with it, you can go back to map mode, and you can obviously pull your range back down so you get a good reference of seeing the standard instrument departure waypoints on your way out. Okay, so next we're going to go over to the mode control panel for the autopilot, and we're going to go and set everything up ready for takeoff. So we're taking off runway 22. So we're going to go and set the speed for the takeoff for the first target for the auto throttle. If you have to revert to a manually set auto throttle, it's worth pointing out if we go VNAV, we won't have a number in here. It will be following the speeds in the legs. Yeah, that's been pre-configured, so it'll go straight for 250 knots. We're going again in the same manner. We're going to go and set the heading to the runway takeoff direction in case we need to revert to it. We're not planning to, and you can have both heading select and LNAV at the same time. So I'll show you that in a moment, and we'll go straight for our climb altitude. And again, we'll be using VNAV, so the aeroplane will stop at the constraints automatically, or it should. So we're just taking this out to 36,000. The only reason I know so much about the 737 is because I started my simulator career, if you want to call it that, with the Zebo mod in X-Plane, which was a study level simulator basically. So by the same token, we're going to be using VNAV to climb out, but we can go vertical speed in here. Yeah, it's not going to let us pre-select it, look. So until we actually go take off, oh, we might be able to with the flight directors on. Let's try it. So with the flight directors, yes we can. So we'll tell it we want to climb out at say 2,500 feet a minute. But we're going to hit VNAV, and it's lit up both, look. So as soon as it establishes VNAV, it will drop vertical speed. Same goes for heading select. We'll go for heading select for lateral, for steering, but we're going to go LNAV, and it will allow us to do both. And as soon as it establishes LNAV, it will drop heading select. Yeah? And again, same for speed. We've got the auto throttle armed. VNAV will take over, that number will go out as soon as we arm the autopilot. It will start to work on its own. Okay, you can see it's complaining about various things, fuel pumps and flight controls. It's complaining about flight controls because it hasn't got hydraulics yet, and that's because the engines aren't running. So we're going to press comma to shortcut. Obviously I've set the weather so there isn't any barometric pressure. It's on standard at low altitude at the moment, so that's not a concern. So overhead we're going to get ready to push back, so we're going to go and put the seatbelts to auto and these no smoking signs. I believe these days they're not just no smoking signs, are they? They're the no personal electronic devices signs. We're going to put the yaw dampers on, and we'll press we've already got the APU up and running. We've done that a little bit out of sequence. So once you've got the APU up and running, you can put APU bleed on. Okay, and we can also go and fire up the rest of the pumps. We can go and turn the anti-collision lights on. I'm just stepping backwards to see if we've missed anything along the way. I don't believe we have. So, we're at the point where you would start the engines. Why do we still have chocks? Did we not get rid of them when we were poking around on the ground? I thought we did. Because we're not going to push back very far with them. Okay, jump back in the cockpit. Or will it let us? We're too far away. Okay. Oh, we need the centre tanks as well. I always miss the centre tanks when I'm talking. I don't know why. It's a bit of a mental block, I suppose. So we've got the overhead stuff done. So looking from outside, we should be able to press Alt and P, and it will trigger the truck to go and push us back. Because normally you would... This is where the simulator becomes really hard work. In the real world, as soon as you're doing the pushback, the crew would start the engines. We're going to watch what it does and then start the engines, so we don't get to do it at the same time. 2024, the truck tends to push back at an angle. I don't know if there's any way of controlling it. I've not found a way. And it may push the wrong angle. So I wouldn't be surprised if it pushes our tail out towards the runways. So I've just come off the parking brake. Is pushback going to work for us today? It does seem a bit hit and miss. Let's just make sure it's trying to, isn't it? Parking brake is off. I think pushback isn't going to work. It's it's just not moving us. So I'm pressing Alt P again to get it to let go. We'll just spin the aircraft round in a 270 if we can once the engines are running. So I've pressed Alt P and he's pulling away. I've got the parking brake back on. We'll just start the engines at the gate and try our luck. So to start the engines, we're going to go and choose an ignition system. We'll go with the right one today. We'll switch engine 2 to GRD. You'll see the N2 come up. When it gets to 25%, we will advance the start lever for engine number 2. So at the moment, that's the compressed air spinning up the gas turbine. When it gets to 25% of nominal speed, you can see motoring. It's quite a good term for it, isn't it? 23, 24, 25. Introduce fuel. Exhaust gas temperature goes up. Fuel flow. Oil temperature and pressure comes up. And it gets hotter and hotter, and the turbofan starts spinning as well. When it has finished its sequence, the start knob at the top will go back to off all on its own. There it goes. So we go for engine number 1 now. And by the same token, N2 is increasing. Yeah, there are various bugs in the simulator to do with pushback and toe brakes and wheel chocks. It's all a bit strange. Sometimes you can get bit by it, sometimes you're lucky and can get away with it, and we're going to hope, beyond hope, it's going to work for us. Okay, so we advance the starts for engine number 1, and it continues on up. We can go and see this happening from outside if you want. So this one's coming up, this one's already travelling at speed. You can see the heat pouring out the back of it. So looking overhead, the switch has just come off, so we can go and put the ignition back in the middle. And if we go and look at this overhead to see it more easily, we can turn the APU bleed off now. We can bus transfer over to the engines themselves now. And then we can turn the APU off. Okay. So I'm just going to check through the checklist. We've done the engine start. So hydraulic pumps are in the middle, so they come on. We can go and put the packs to auto, so that's the cabin pressurization system and environmental control system, I should say. And taxi lights can go to on, and we are essentially ready to taxi. So one thing we do need to do is go and look at the pedestal. So usually when the big jets are taxiing, they'll be broadcasting their position, and you'll see that it looks like this is non-functional. No, it's just that the brightness has been turned right down. I don't know why. So TCAS is up here, and you can see we want the transponder on or on auto at this point, and we want this to be on TA, which means we're broadcasting our position, which is how you appear on Flight Radar 24, for example. Okay, so we can go taxi. So shift and space will show us the cockpit. I will press the magic button to make the head tracking work, and we'll ease the throttle forward, and we're moving. So hard right turn. Yeah, we're going to go through the gantry. I'm not too worried about it. Because you can't hit gantries in Flight Simulator, thankfully, and because the pushback didn't work, it was really our only easy option. We could have gone left, which wouldn't have broken the immersion so badly, but I'm not too worried. We're leaving a huge skid mark with the front tyre. Okay, so we'll go out into, look how big the A330 is compared to us in the 737. It makes us look like a dinky toy, doesn't it? So while we're taxiing out, we can go and set the flaps to 5 degrees. So that's also extended the leading edge flaps, which is why we have the light here. We also want to go and set the brakes to rejected takeoff. Everything is pre-configured up here. So we just need to get to the runway then, and then we can switch the lights on and go. I don't know what's going on with the stuttering. I think it might be the aircraft, it might be the airfield, I really don't know. It comes and goes. Centered up. Okay, landing lights on. And strobe lights on. I think we're good across the rest of the lights. So, auto throttle is armed. We can, on the real thing, they would press the toga button at this point. So you just press the button under here. I'm going to just push the throttles forwards because I want to try something out. I want to see if we can go beyond 100%. Oh, we've got a configuration change. What's that complaining about? Oh, it's because I've got the brakes on. Of course it is. So as soon as you open the throttles, it does a configuration check. and I had the parking brake on, so it was shouting at me. Okay, so we're looking for VR on the indicated airspeed ribbon, and there it is. It seems very nose heavy. So gear up.
Boeing Bravo Charlie Echo 9012, you were not cleared to take off.
I know. And the trim is bizarre. So we'll go autopilot on, auto throttle's on. Notice it should be using LNAV, and it is, although it's still showing a heading, which is interesting. So LNAV and VNAV have kicked in. The throttles are on. It's using the climb profile, so it's climbing out towards 250 knots. I'm going to raise the flaps so it will go out towards 250 knots now. It was restricting itself based on the configuration of the aircraft. So flaps are now in. It'll be interesting to see if it can hold this corner. Let's allow it to have a higher bank angle. So it should come up to about 4,000 or 5,000 feet according to the restrictions, I think, or constraints. Can we show constraints? I'm not sure that you can. We should be able to show traffic though. Can we click on... Okay, so they're not allowing you to show the TCAS data, which is a shame. Let's press Alt and 7. So we're going to go and look down here and put this on TARA now. It's following the route, although it's gone wide, maybe because we let it go to 250 knots instead of holding like 220 around the corner. So we don't have TCAS operational to put the radius rings in by the look of it. Oh no, you can. It's both buttons. Some team of developers at Asobo have decided that in their perfect wisdom that instead of single clicking on a click spot for some things, you have to press left and right mouse buttons. I don't know why they've done it. Yeah, we can even play with this, look, and have the different modes by using both mouse buttons. They've kind of done their own thing and gone away from how all of the other aircraft work. I think I needed talking to. That's the first time I've seen stuttering, by the way. I'm just looking at the comments. It may be that it's been common to the 737 that it stuttered. So maybe it is a feature of the aircraft. So flight director's working, and it's following the route nicely. It's holding the altitude restriction, which is mandated by the standard instrument departure. So once we get past BKY3, I think we'll be good to go. So let's increase the range. Yeah, so as soon as we get around this corner, you should see the throttles open up and the aircraft climb out towards 36,000 feet. Well, that's the plan. It's just tootling along following the restrictions at the moment, which is good to see that it's doing it, to be honest. So we appear to have independent FMCs, which means we can have the progress page on one side and the legs page on the other, which is always nice. We've got an awful lot more fuel than we need, so getting to Edinburgh is not going to be a problem. We've probably got almost enough fuel to get to Halifax and Nova Scotia. Certainly get to Iceland on this much. So there we go. It's going to be pretty plain sailing now, really. So we just need to be careful of, although because we haven't got live weather, we haven't got to deal with the barometric pressure as we come up through 6,000 feet. So we're already at standard barometric pressure, but because it's not saying STD, I wonder if it will shout at us. So normally you'd be expecting to press the button So we'll see what happens when we come through 6,000. Because although we've got it set to the same setting as standard barometric pressure, there we go, look, we've just come through the waypoint and we're climbing. So as we come through 6,000, it'll be interesting to see if this starts flashing at us. God, can it climb 6,000 feet a minute? Can it hold that? Although I suppose we haven't got 400 passengers behind us, have we? So, is it flashing? Doesn't appear so. But anyway, we'll try this to see what happens. So, yeah, again, both buttons on the mouse, left and right mouse button, toggled it over to standard. So, the next thing we need to do at 10,000 feet is turn the landing lights off. So we just wait. Oh, it's calming it down a bit now. Look, 4,000 feet a minute. It's still a crazy climb rate. Should we increase the range so we get to see those waypoints out in front of us? 80 miles to Trent, another 20 to Pole Hill, and then we're on our way down into Edinburgh. Did I turn the engine bleeds on? Let's go and have a look. So, in terms of the APU bleed, no, I haven't. So they were lit up, telling me that they weren't happening. So that would be interesting to see if that had had any effect. I don't know how well simulated it is. That's missing off my checklist. I need to go and add that. That's interesting. But it hadn't actually raised any alarms about it either. So yeah, it makes you wonder how accurately simulated it is in terms of the back-end systems. The rejected takeoff didn't switch off on its own either. I think it should maybe. I'd have to think back to my memories of. I think it goes back to off on its own, doesn't it? Or it should. When the PMDGs arrive in 2024, we'll be able to test them. So we've gone through 10,000 feet anyway, so landing lights come off. And we're on our way to Scotland. I'm using legacy controls, but what my argument, I'm just reading the Livestream comments about this. My argument is no other aeroplanes other than some of the new ones from Asobo use both mouse buttons. It's only some of the new ones have got this new paradigm, if you want to call it that, of pressing both mouse buttons to click a button on the end of a knob. Whether that's because of a programming or an interface design shortcoming, I don't know. Or whether they're just trying to establish that as a new way of doing things, I don't know. Should we put that live weather back on? Make it a little bit more fun. Yeah, my only concern when we were below the cloud on the runway, it would have made the cockpit very dark for you to see what was going on. I guess it's an opportunity as well though to play with some of the brightnesses to see what we can do with brightening up the cockpit. I probably need to add a few more options in about brightening up the various panels in the aircraft. You know, just so the displays are nice and clear to look at. So where, I'm just trying to remember where the brightness for the mode control panel is. Is it down here somewhere? I'm not going to get too worried. We can see the numbers, so it's not a huge concern. If we were following the procedures on the startup absolutely to the letter, we would have set the course to the same direction as the heading, just in case. Again, a lot of these things you do, and they don't get used later. It's kind of just convention for safety's sake. So, oh, the taxi lights can come off. They would have come off anyway when the gear went up, but best to have the switch in the correct position. So as we saw earlier, although this says automatic, I'm guessing we ought to put that to cruise altitude then. So that's something else I need to mention then, is once you've set the brightness, to go and set that. How are we doing? 25,000 feet and climbing. But it's always a bit difficult, isn't it? When you're aware that an aeroplane maybe isn't quite as well simulated as it could be, you wonder, is it something you've done if something's not working as expected? Or is it something that's not implemented? So I'm just looking for the... Oh, it's behind the throttles over there. Looking for these buttons. Turn the sys off on the co-pilot side. So we can increase his range, so it's all independently controlled, which is really nice. So we can see more of the route to Scotland. And I'm guessing do the same thing with TCAS on his side. See, ideally on this knob, when we push it, there should be an extra overlay in here showing the vertical profile of the route, but it doesn't look like it's been implemented. I wonder if you can do it when it's on full screen. Let's try it. So TCAS won't do it. No, it's not been implemented. Well, it doesn't look like it anyway. So I have a few edits to make to the procedure document. I'll busy myself with that while you're looking at the aeroplane climbing through the sky to its cruise altitude. So I'm just going to go and have a look overhead to compare some of these things. So this is the environmental control system at the bottom right that I'm looking at now. Was there lighting control up here anywhere? I'm going to put a section in the procedure notes about exactly which lighting controls to configure. I don't think there are any. They're all down in the cockpit now, aren't they? What about further up? Nope, that's just got the interphone. So then there's some bizarre decisions on what they have as the default views. So we adjusted the flood and panel lights for this. So which lights or which light control configured the brightness for this? Was it this one? Nope. Must be one up here somewhere that I'm missing. Is it? It must be just that one then. Yeah, it is. So I need to include that in the instructions. What would you call that panel that's got that on it? It says circuit breaker, but that's not. Yeah, it's the lighting at the top in the middle. Okay, lighting section, top, middle. Rotate panel knob clockwise to max, or clockwise as required. Okay, so we're trundling along. We're coming up towards 36,000 feet following the profile. If we go route data, they have implemented this, so you get all your ETAs along the way. We haven't got wind data. I'm not sure if you can pull it from the ground when you're doing pre-flight. I'll have to have another look at that. Yeah, so I'm just looking at the live stream comments there. Rune has got it right about where the lights were. So I've already documented it. It's in the checklist now. And yes, the labelling of many things in the 737s is very odd. It's almost like it was built by an old company run by unions. That would get itself into enormous financial trouble. That couldn't ever happen, could it? Okay, we've just reached cruise altitude. So, having done that, we can go and turn the passenger seatbelts to off. They were on auto, but we've done it for them. So we've got about 80 miles to top of descent, so we've got some time. So we can admire the outside of the airplane as we whistle along for a little while. It's a good point actually, when you're looking at an outside view, can you, does the, is it control, or no, right alt wasn't it? Can we pop the screens out? Yes we can. So can we still do this then? And then if we went in here and said, show us the outside view, and put this up in the corner of the screen, just so we can see where we are. That's quite a nice way of doing it, isn't it? Because then I guess you could do the same trick with the primary flight display. So we could press right alt and click on it, make it smaller, put it over that side. Oh, it doesn't like being resized. Or it likes to have it, oh my word, it likes to have its full complement of rubbish. Maybe if we do that. Just make it a bit smaller. Then we can put this on the outside view and still see our screens while we're flying along. Whoa! Oh, thank you, Windows. That was really helpful of you. Yeah. So if you plug second or third or fourth screens into your PC, you can press the right Alt key, click on a glass screen, and it will turn it into a window. And then you can, if you've got multiple screens, you could drag it onto the other screen and maximize it. That's how things like the GoFlight hardware works. We only really need this little one, don't we? Just to see where we are. But that's how the GoFlights work. That you can move the screens out to your own screen to do things. Look at the name of that window. Working title, Boeing, I'm guessing 737-800M MDF, or MFD, sorry, 1. We've picked up a comm radio channel from somewhere. Should we go and detune it? We'll just sit in the cockpit for a few minutes. So we're about 80 miles from top of descent. Cruising along, it always scares me that if left to its own devices with VNav, the plane will get remarkably close to the red line on the indicated airspeed. What's the cabin like, somebody's asking. I did actually do a walkthrough earlier, but we'll do a walkthrough now with the normal view. So, cannot exit. Oh, can we walk through it? Oh, that's a shame. Is there a lock? It's already unlocked. Maybe if we put on auto, I'm a crew member, please let me through. Nope. Okay, so what we'll do then is go to the drone camera. So Shift and X. It's going to move around though, which is the only shame about this. So it's going to make us feel very sick. So this is a business version of the 737 of the Max. So it's got all these lovely seats and everything inside it. And lounges. I believe there's a bedroom around the corner. Oh no, it's desk with a chair. Very plush chair. It's better than my chair. Bed. Somebody used to make the bed properly, didn't they? Well, now, where is the wisdom? Do you think that vase... Oh yeah, the vase is inset into the table. You'd think it would slide around and fall out, wouldn't you? And a shower room and a toilet. It's mental, isn't it? So if we come further up the aircraft, try and fly the drone camera in line with the airplane moving around, which isn't fun. And way back into the cockpit. And then press Shift and X and we're back in the pilot seat. No, we're just moving around in the air. I've got live weather on, so the air is moving around. It's a little bit bumpy today. Obviously you don't see that on the normal cockpit view. But when you're in the drone camera, which is offset from the aeroplane moving, you do see the aeroplane moving around. And it only has to move a tiny bit to, for you to notice it. We don't need that window open anymore. So yeah, I know people have complained bitterly about this aeroplane and said that it wasn't ready or whatever. And there are elements of it that are really odd. Like it was very heavy on the nose on takeoff. The trim wheel was bizarre. It was going like 1,000 miles an hour. And using the vertical trim was massively over the top. So elevator trim. So when I came off the runway and wanted to let go of the stick, I went to trim my way out of holding onto the stick, or the yoke, as you might better describe it. And it kicked in an enormous amount of trim, much more than it would have done in other versions of the 737. It was ever so slightly strange. Right, I'm going to make a quick coffee. We've got about 40 miles to top of descent, so I'm going to run off, make a coffee. I'll be back in a minute. And then we'll go through descent together and see how we get on with bringing it into Edinburgh. See you in a moment. Okay, I'm back. So I have coffee. Hopefully it will give me superpowers for the descent. So the way VNav works is you set a target altitude and then it will obey the restrictions on the way down. So let's get the yoke out of the way so we can actually see the FMC. We'll go back to legs. So you can see if we press legs it goes to the top of the list. So we're coming up to Cockpit, which we can see is true. And we can see the top of descent marker is coming, and it has got various constraints. So it's going to get to 26,000 feet for Agped after it starts descending here. Then it wants to get to 7,000 feet for Tartan, and so on and so forth. So let's see how well it manages it. So if we go and set, we'll just set the altitude for the eventual altitude we want to get to, which will be about 4,000 feet on the final turn when we're going through that Lama waypoint. So we'll set that immediately as our target altitude. And if we do it, press both buttons on it, I'm guessing, let's see if it reacts. So it's set a target, but when it comes through top of descent, the VNav, which is lit up, should kick in and start descending the aircraft, following the constraints. So let's see what happens. Should we zoom in a little bit? There we go. So there's the top of descent marker. We're about to come through it. And there it goes, look. There's the profile we should be following on VNav. And it's following it. So this is projecting a line down through the sky, just like a glide slope. And it's flashing because we've fallen behind it, or the aircraft has fallen behind it. Let's see if it catches it back up. So it's increasing the descent rate further and further. It's winding the throttles down. So it's fallen behind where it needs to get to. So it needs to get this back into the middle. But we'll give it the benefit of the doubt for a few minutes. If we want to help it, we can put the spoilers out. Should we try it? So if I'm trying to get it so you can see the levers. So we've got the speed brake lever here. Oh, the speed brakes aren't working. Or at least, hang on a minute, the airplane's moving. Is it just that this isn't working? Yeah, the speed brakes are working, but the lever isn't doing anything. Okay, that's the first major bug we found. And you can see now we've gone way below. By using the spoilers, it kicked us way below the profile. Interesting. Every flight I do turns into a test flight, doesn't it? Here we go, the aeroplane's catching back up now. Now we've left it in a stable situation. It's trying to stabilise itself. There we go. And there's the green banana, which shows your projected point at which you will reach your target altitude. But remember, that's based on its current situation, and it has constraints to fly through. So it will be holding at various altitudes along the way. It won't just carry on straight down at the rate it's currently descending at. But overall, there's not a massive amount wrong with the aeroplane. I know people will have a fit over the tiniest details sometimes, but broadly speaking, the airplane's working. There's a couple of animations that haven't been hooked up. which would throw you if you thought the speed brake wasn't on and it was. So yeah, I can see the frustration there. So let's go and have a look before we get anywhere near at the ILS at Edinburgh. So 108.9, 240 degrees. So we'll go and set both courses to 240. I'm going the wrong way around the compass. It would help if I went the shorter direction around the compass. So 240 degrees on both of them. So this is in preparation for being on the localizer in a bit. Because we'll switch the display over to approach mode when we make the final turn in towards the runway. So by the same token, so what was it again? I'll turn that off so it doesn't keep changing our focus. 108.9. So the nav radios are down here, and we've got an ILS frequency and a VOR frequency. So let's remind ourselves how this works, because I can't remember for the life of me. So ILS, and we want to change it to 108.9, don't we? Yeah. So do we have to do it? So 10890. Interesting. Oh, you get to change. Okay, I get it. 1089. So this is the standby, and you can change the mode of either the active, or you can change the mode of the standby frequency before you transfer it into active. I get it. So 108.9. No, not 10890, and then transfer that over to active. So we've got both tuned in, so we'll be able to take no notice of the curves at the moment, because we will be slowing down as well, remember, before we get anywhere near Lama. If we need to, because I didn't program any restrictions in, did I? Although it's calculated it itself, look. It's put 230 knots in at Lama, and then 210 will be following the procedures. If we go and look in Navigraph at the approach, so coming in via Tartan, remember we've got an extra waypoint out here that's not on the chart, because this is vectors at this point. You know, be under ATC control to get from Tartan over to the entry into the approach. So we've kind of simulated that by putting an interstitial waypoint in. So 230 knots at Tartan, and then if you look over on the approach chart, we've got, does it give us any max speeds here? Max 210 knots, yeah. So as soon as you leave Tartan, you're looking to get down to 210 knots, and then you're into the approach. So, yeah. So again, LittleNavMap really doesn't draw it very well. This is where Navigraph comes into its own, I guess. And again, you could follow the DME arc as well. It's another way of doing it if you chose the appropriate approach to do it. But we'll see how the airplane gets on. It's still on the descent profile to hit 4,000 feet. And I think looking at the approach, it wants us 4,000. So remember, we're going out here. So in between Lama and CI24, we want to be down to 4,000 feet. Then down to 3,000 feet on the turn. Okay, 16,000 feet and descending. We'll we need to find out the transition altitude, 6,000 feet. And we need the barometric pressure at Edinburgh, don't we? So open the airport, go for the weather. 990 hectopascals, 29.23 inches. No doubt I'll forget that by the time we get there, so we'll have another look when we get there. The centre tank warning should come on soon. We're nearly out of fuel in the centre tank. We've still got the wings completely full of fuel. So like I said, it was a very short route for the amount of fuel we had on the aeroplane. So we may not have many passengers in, but we've got many tons of fuel. We're about to go into the clouds. It's a shame the wind isn't the right way to come in on the opposite side of the airport, because then going the western side of Edinburgh, you descend over these rolling hills, and it really is quite spectacular. But coming in over the Firth of Forth is a lot more sedate. But yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised, to be honest. I'd heard so many horror stories about this 737, and yes, it has some bugs, but it's nowhere near as bad as people are portraying it to be. I think there's a common trait amongst the sim community that if something has the tiniest thing wrong, then the whole thing's garbage, and everybody involved in making it is an idiot somehow. When I think this simulator is a colossal achievement, really. And I'm biased, I've said this in the past, I'm biased, I'm a software developer, so I understand what's involved in making large projects, because I work in the corporate world, so some of the projects are scarily big. Okay, we're down to 250 knots already, so it's already managed the deceleration. It will have done that with descent rate and throttle on the way. So you can see the curves are making a lot more sense now, because it always illustrates the curves at your current speed, not at the speed you'll be at when you get there. So to make it even easier, what we could do is, rather than go VNav, no, we'll leave it. We'll just see how well VNav does. I was going to say we could take over and start controlling things, but I think there's some interest in seeing how accurately it manages to descend of its own accord, looking at the constraints. So 230 knots and 7,000 feet for Tartan is the target. And we need to be 3,000 feet by the time we turn into the approach. So we could set this for 3,000 feet. Interesting, that knob's rolling the wrong direction. At least it's not as bad as the Twin Otter, where the ailerons go the opposite direction than the stick is influencing them to go. So I don't understand what's unfinished in career mode. I'm just reading the live stream comments, because I've been playing around with career mode and it seems to work absolutely fine. I've been chugging through doing cargo flights and passenger flights and getting out B's, A's and supers. I think is that what S stands for? It's been quite good, I thought. Obviously it's not following proper procedures, but then they've had to gamify it, otherwise the learning curve would be vertical. and it wouldn't be fair for newcomers. Even, you know, to go and sit in a 172 and do a proper circuit following real procedures, you're going to have 20 pages of instructions to follow. I'm not going to get into arguments with people who just come out with damning comments, I'm afraid, and I may actually even remove them from the live stream. So how is the aeroplane doing? It's starting to decelerate, it's coming down to 230 knots. It's coming through the corner, it's going to hit 7,000 feet, pretty much on the button. This is impressive. Remember, we've got live weather on, so we've got 60 knot winds at the moment. So, yeah, Sci Voltage in the live stream comments is mentioning about the restricted airspaces appearing. Yep, I'm seeing that as well. So you're having to do the homework ahead of the career flights to go and check the flight plan in the planner and make sure you avoid airspaces. So it's giving you some, you know, some homework to do, which is great, I think. It just, you know, it did it slowly. So it's slowly waking people up to the complexities of arranging a flight plan and working out what you should be doing along the way. So this is not descending yet, which is worrying me. It's got a target of 3,000. It's holding at 7,000. Obviously it doesn't need to in its own mind until we get further around the corner. I guess the problem is that a computer system will always leave things as late as it can, whereas a human would build in some margin, or I would. So occasionally I do group flights with my air, and we've got ATC online and they'll be shouting out instructions, and you'll typically want to be configured and stabilized on approach earlier than the last moment. You know, you want to be able to have time to react or to follow unexpected instructions. So it's beginning the descent again now to get down to 3,000 feet. I'd love to see the decision-making algorithm of how it compares the restrictions. So it's going to try and get to 3,000 feet by the look of it, in my mind, by ITH 90, which is over here, look, as it comes out of the corner. So it'll be descending in the turn, you would imagine. We'll see what it does. So can we go to 5 degrees flaps? Yeah, we can. Or is it 1 degree? No, 2 degrees. Because I'm using an Airbus controller, it doesn't always map against the Boeing detents for the flaps very accurately. So we're below the glide slope. We can see that the localizer is off to our side, which is correct. And it's pretty much got that right. Look, it's going to hit 3,000 feet at around ITH 90. I'm always tremendously impressed by this sort of thing, where it's a system simulating a system that's being simulated. So we do have up here, if I can figure out how to work it, a head-up display as well. So if I press Alt 7, and there we go. So it's a collimated display, so it stays on the axis of the aircraft. It's very good, isn't it? So you can see the effect of that crosswind. Look, there's the direction we're pointing, and that's the actual direction we're travelling. Because we've got a 60 knot crosswind at the moment. That will abate as we get lower. So we're down to 160 knots, so we're going to go for the next stage of flaps. You've got a flap limit sheet over here, look. So we're doing 160 knots, so we could come down to flaps 30. I'm not going to just yet. We'll go to flaps 15, I guess. And once we turn the corner, we'll drop the gear and put the landing lights out. And we'll drop the range here as well. And on the other side. The one thing I found that Flight Sim's never been very good at is drawing the velocity vector pointing in the right direction. You know, the actual direction the aircraft's going. It's usually roughly correct, but it's always been a little bit out. But it is fantastically difficult to calculate that properly. So it's certainly nicer weather in Scotland than when we left London. So just reading the live stream comments there, I completely understand people that are frustrated with the simulator in its current state. Historically, I've always been more of an optimist. I kind of champion the things that are working well, and you know, we'll try to live with them. So let's get this. I think this can be a distraction. The head-up display. So we're coming in towards the final turn. We've slowed right down to 150 knots. Should we go and put the wheels down now? If you want to watch them. You hear the thrust coming up to combat the drag. Let's go and turn the lights on as well then. That's interesting. So why have we not got some super bright lights shining down? Maybe they won't come on until we turn. Maybe it's clever. Okay, we're coming in towards, we're still on the profile, you can see it here, look. So when we make the turn, we'll switch the navigation display over to approach mode, but we'll leave the co-pilot side alone. So you can see there's the fourth. The fourth bridge is just down there, it's just too far away to resolve it at the moment, but it is out there. And the airport's over this side somewhere, or is that it there? I can't remember. we'll see when we turn, because the screens will suddenly make a lot more sense. So we're coming up to the final turn, onto final approach. 3,600 feet or 3,700 feet and descending. Still below the glide slope. Should we watch it make the turn? Just about make the bridge out then, don't they? Okay, so the glide slope has just arrived at the top of the scale there. The localizer is coming into the middle. It's doing a pretty good job of it, isn't it? And it'll be coming out of the bank soon. You can see that rotating around towards the runway. So more flaps. Approach mode on the display. So you can now see the CDI and the glide slope more easily. Going for full flaps.
2,500.
So we've still got 50 knot winds at the moment. This is going to be hairy. I might take over. I have no doubt it could land itself. But I've got more confidence in me than it. .52 knot headwind with a crosswind component of probably about 15 knots sideways. So we should have changed. Well, we should have put the barometric pressure in some time ago. Let's go do that. So what was it? It was 2923. It doesn't really matter at this point because we've got the glide slope to work from. So here comes the glide slope. Yeah, because as soon as you've got the glide slope, your printed altitude really doesn't, or for the earlier stages of your descent, doesn't really matter. It's only when you're near the ground that it comes into play, that you need to know airfield elevation as well as, and again, only in restricted visibility we can see the ground already. We only really start worrying about altitudes when we can't see anything. It's Edinburgh. So, Michael Stark is saying, if you want a good 737 MAX, try the iFly. Yeah, but the iFly isn't out for 2024 yet, is it? And I'm in 2024. So, I'm looking at what we have, and to be honest, I'm purposely looking at the aircraft that come with the simulator, because not everybody can afford to go buying all of the aeroplanes. So I'm deliberately trying to cover them. Now this is hunting a little bit on the auto throttle, so I'm going to take over. So this is me now. I'll just give the aeroplane a waggle. So we can see the runway directly in front of us. We've got the ILS tuned in. So let's go a little bit faster. And put ourselves up onto the glide slope rather than fly straight into it. We're not going to go up very steeply, we'll just level out into the glide slope. So you can see it here, look, and here. We've got visuals on the runway, so we don't really need to pay too much attention to the localizer, which is obviously showing on the HSI over there as well for approach mode. I'm just going to speed us up a bit. Just need to remember not to rely too much on trim, because the trimming is a little bit erratic. But yeah, compared to what people have said about this aeroplane, I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as people are making out. Yes, it has a few little bugs here and there, but they're not deal breakers. As you saw, it flew VNAV route very well indeed. And programming it worked fine through the FMC, so we've done a manually programmed route. Broadly speaking, all the systems have worked exactly as they should. We'll see, I guess push comes to shove when we get to finals and flaring onto the runway and we get to see what it feels like. So I'll be fully prepared if needed to slam the throttles forwards and go round, because this is obviously the first time I've landed it and I'm fully manual. I've turned the auto throttle off, I've turned the autopilot off, so we're just following the instrumentation in. But it's very nice and stable at the moment. We've got a 44 knot headwind, which is making us hang on the wings somewhat alarmingly. I'm guessing that wind is going to abate the lower we get, so we may start to lose a little bit of lift. Yeah, you can see it's tailing off. It's down to 40 knots, dipping down to 30, so it's gusting. So the lower we get, we're suddenly losing that high-speed wind, and we're losing lift. So the nose was starting to fall. So I'm going more by the pappies now rather than the glide slope, because they don't seem to agree very much.
500.
Yeah, that gusting wind is giving us bursts of lift. We're down to 20 knots now on the wind, but it keeps gusting up to sort of 30-ish. And then down to 15, and it really is affecting the lift. So we'll just do our best and see what happens.
300.
A little bit low.
Glide slow. Glide slow.
I know.
Glide slow. Glide slow. Glide slow.
But we're perfect on the pappies, look, but not on the glide slope, so I'm going to judge to go by the pappies.
Glide slow. Glide slow. 100. Approaching minimums. Glide slow.
I'm going to ignore the glide slope call-outs.
30.
Whoa, crosswind.
Glide slow. 20. 10.
Trying to push it back round. Going to get one tire down first. That wind is really... We've got an awful lot of right aileron there just to keep the plane level. But that was quite straightforward. It actually helped having an enormous headwind, but the crosswind component at the last moment was quite challenging. But it wasn't uncontrollable, it was quite straightforward. Anyway, we did it. Let's have a look at the plane from outside. So as we come off the runway, we want to go and turn the landing lights off. We never put the passenger lights back on, did we? But we haven't got any passengers though, I don't think. We've got an empty aeroplane. It's a business jet with nobody on it. So there was no point really having passenger lights in the first place. So the strobes can go to steady now. It's a bit of a mistake here in the airport. No doubt they'll fix that fairly soon. I've heard that about a few of the airports who've got signage in the wrong places. Obviously needs tweaking. So on the taxi on the way in, we can go and restart the APU. So if we can't get external power, we can shut the aeroplane down and not lose electrical power to the cockpit. Or shut the engines down, I mean, and transfer back over to the APU shortly before we kill the engines. I love the wings flexing around as we go over the bumps. Very cool. You can see the suspension working. So, in the live stream I'm being asked, have I messed around with firefighting missions? Not yet. So Rune's saying, almost toppled a 172 earlier with a 5-knot crosswind. I was live streaming a flight with, I think it was the Twin Otter the other day, and I think I crashed 2 of them in a row. I had 30-knot winds, crosswinds, and it kept getting underneath the wing to such an extent on landing that it tipped the aeroplane over with full aileron deflection. I couldn't combat it. Yeah, these signposts are all in the wrong places, aren't they? It's almost like they've been offset by about 100 yards. I'm going to bring us in here. Parking brake on. APU should be up and running. Yep, the light has come on for APU Gen. So we've transferred power generation now over to the APU, which means we can go and shut the engines down. And down they go. And we know that we only need the aft corner fuel pump on for the APU. So we can go overhead and we can go and start turning things off. Hydraulic pumps off. And window heats off. Probe heats off. Yaw damper off. We can disarm the emergency lights. Oh, it comes back on, doesn't it? I always forget that if you shut the lid on it. What else do we need to do? Those lights are off. The position lights can come off. Anti-collision lights off. Taxi lights already off. So if we want to go and turn off the APU now, we can. Oh, we'll turn the packs off as well while we're at it. And then the pump for the APU can come off, and then the batteries can come off as well. And I've forgotten where the batteries are. Up here. And we go cold and dark. Very cool. She doesn't look very happy with me for some... What have I done? What haven't I done? Followed by, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. Can we open this now we're on the ground? Oh, it takes us outside, doesn't it? I forget that. You can't just go and wander around the cabin. So there we go. We landed at Edinburgh largely in one piece and then tripped over the baggage truck and injured ourselves. So I don't think the 737 is anywhere near as bad as people would have you believe. I think it's perfectly usable. Yes, it's not perfect and it has bugs, but it's actually, it works, and it works like a 737 kind of should. Obviously there's bits missing, and there's a couple of things that are reversed. A few animations are missing here and there, like the spoilers on the lever. But otherwise it worked. It flew a VNAV route, and there's so many aeroplanes that have had messed up VNAVs in the simulator. It was kind of nice to see one that worked. So yeah, there you go. I'll update the procedure that I've written up that walks you through where to look for all the switches. So if you're just starting out with the 737, so it will be available. I can show you where it will be online. So if you go to kofi.com/John Beckett/shop, and you go and look in here, it will be this one that I've just put up. Well, someone's already bought it. They'll find there'll be an upgraded one in about 10 minutes time. So yeah, so it goes through all of the steps of getting the airplane ready. I'll just show it one more time in the browser. Actually, I could show it in here. If I go to downloads and open this up. So this is the actual document. So it goes through showing you all the views, and then it goes through what keyboard keys to press to go to all the predefined views, and where to look for the different sections of the panels, and what to press along the way. So you can print it out, obviously, or just have it on a second screen somewhere as you work around the aeroplane, and it just guides you from panel to panel to panel for everything you need to do. So I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you've enjoyed that today, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. See you soon.